born March 1st, 1950 in Lafayette, Louisiana, and then 2 days later my mom brought me home to New Iberia, Louisiana. Went to a small Catholic school as a kid and played football in high school, was an all-state football player, played basketball. My parents were the best parents in the whole world. My father and mother taught me an awful lot. They taught me how to be genuine. They taught me about religion. They taught me about everything in life. I went to USL mainly because of Coach Banner, Bobby Banner, because I loved him and I respected him and I knew what kind of person he was. Played football at USL for 4 years, and I was a 4-year letterman there. I had to go off to Fort Polk. I went from basic to AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, then OCS in Fort Benning, Georgia. They wouldn't let me out of the ceremony, so I started law school two days late. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a high school coach because I loved my high school coach. He was like a second father to me, although I had a great father. You know, some kids latch on to their coach because they didn't have that background. I latched on to mine because I did. My father and my coach they had a lot of respect for one another, and I understood that. So I wanted to be a football coach. And my mother said, "You're not going to be a football coach. They don't make any money. You know, you got to have a family. If you have a family, you're going to have to take care of that family, and those poor coaches don't make enough money. You're going to do just like your brother. You're going to become a lawyer." And I said, we'll see about that. So when I got to college, I went into business, and after the first semester, I realized, I think I want to practice law. I did a few things around my brother's office, and that kind of convinced me. When I was in law school, my junior and senior year, I clerked for the firm of Burns and Chazet. I learned a lot from them, probably as much from them as I did from law school, maybe even more. I met Kathleen, I want to say after the first semester of law school. My little sister Joy and she were very, very close when in undergraduate school. Not close in years, but yeah, close in years also. But they were good friends, and I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and Joy wanted to introduce me to Kathleen, so she brought her over to the house. It actually snowed, I think, that year in New Iberia, and we made a snow woman. I had to take off body parts of the snow woman before my mom came home, but we drank scotch in the snow and had a wonderful time. And to tell you the truth, I probably knew then that's who I wanted to marry, Kathleen Burke. We got married in August, right after I finished law school and took the bar exam. My first trial was against John M. Dewey, who later became Judge Dewey, who later became Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Dewey in federal court. I thought I had a great case. I got ready and I did it all myself because my brother was going out doing stuff in politics. And after a day and a half of the trial, we settled, and I called him up and asked him if I could talk to him and would he tell me what I did was right and what was wrong. He said, sure. I went over there. 2.5 hours later, he explained everything to me. And it made me a better lawyer, and I was very grateful to him for that. But when I left, I shook his hand, I thanked him, and I said, Mr. Dewey, next time we have something together, I'm going to kick your butt instead of you kicking my butt. And he laughed and said, you might, Dickie. I practiced law for only 9 years, but in 9 years I probably tried 10, 12, 14 civil jury trials in federal and state court, and the same in criminal trials, federal and state court. So I had a lot of experience as a lawyer, and I enjoyed the practice of law, and I enjoyed helping people. During that period of time, we started the Acadiana Legal Services, which was a great opportunity to help the community. And I was doing an awful lot of pro bono work, and I realized how much we needed a community service law group to help out. So I was the first vice chairman of the Acadiana Legal Services, and I did that for quite a while. I was also on the board of SNAP, Safety Net for Abused Persons. My father told me, he says, "You're not the normal politician because you can't look somebody in the eye and tell them something they want to hear just because they want to hear it. You need to be a judge." That's what my father told me. He said, "You're honest, you're straight up, and you need to be a judge. And I think if you run for anything, that's what you should run for." And he was still alive when I ran for judge. And again, I had no opposition at age 34 in the 16th JDC, which is Iberia, St. Martin, St. Mary Parish. I was on the state bench for right at 7 years. One situation when I was on the state bench was when a young man, African American, who I was very friendly with, he got a call in the middle of the night that his brother was having some problems and he had a gun and my friend goes to run over there to find what was going on. By the time he got there, he was dead. They shot him. The police shot him. And because I was on the bench, the family called me and asked me if I would explain to them how this really happened. Well, I get to the house of one of the brothers, and they had like 13 in the family, 13 kids. And I was at one of the brother-in-laws and sisters' home, and I remember it very well. And I walked in, and there were like 200 people in this 3-bedroom house. They were angry, and I understood their anger. I convinced them to wait and not do anything crazy until after we find out exactly what happened. And during that time, a couple of days, several days after the death, after the burial, there was a scuffle at the house of the mother of the child who got killed, and the mother of my friend. And they sent over the same police officer who killed the young man. And we hadn't gotten a report yet, so we didn't know what happened. They got in an argument. My friend got in a fight with the police officer, knocked him out. He gets up later and they arrest him for simple battery on a police officer. And I was very concerned that because of it was against the police officer, that the judge and the mayor and the prosecutor and everybody else would be against this young man and do something to really harm him. And I'm glad I went to the chief of police, who I knew very well. I went to the city judge, who I used to double date with. I went to the mayor, who I taught to play ping pong, and he taught me how to dribble a basketball. And the prosecutor, who I didn't know her well, but I knew her husband. Anyway, I convinced them to prosecute him, not to persecute him. He went to jail for 30 days because that's the law, that's the mandatory minimum. I was proud of helping him with that, and I really think at that point I prevented a racial situation that could have erupted in New Iberia. And I got a call from a friend of our family who had worked for Ronald Reagan, and he calls me up and says, "You need to put your hat in the ring and try to get this job." I really didn't want to be a federal judge. I wanted to be the district attorney. And my friend Bernie Boudreaux was the district attorney. He was still a Democrat, and there was a Republican situation, and I became a Republican just because I was anti-abortion at the time, and I still am anti-abortion. But anyway, I switched to Republican after my father died. I couldn't do it while he was still alive, I don't think. But so I switched over, and they called me up and said, "You need to put your hat in the ring." So I got a resume together, My secretary, John, Dewey's secretary, helped me put it together, and we sent it off. My wife helped me put the resume together. Sent it off to all the congressmen, and there was only two, I think only two congressmen that were Republicans at the time, maybe three, but I went to one of them, the only one who answered my letter, and I went to see him in Baton Rouge, Congressman Richard Baker, and he said he wanted to help me because he thought I'd be a good candidate. That situation went on for about a year and a half, about a year and a half before they called, before President Bush won, H.W., called me from Air Force One to tell me he was nominating me for the position. Judge Putnam, Richard Putnam, who was the senior status judge, asked me to take on a little case that he had. And he was getting older in age, and I said, sure, I'll take it. He said, not much, Haik, it's not much. I said, okay, Judge. And this was a huge case out of St. Mary Parish that was in federal court. Federal stuff it was involved with it. And I had several hearings, and after my second hearing, this guy that I knew pretty well, who moved into New Iberia, had a restaurant, came to my house and he told me I could make $2 million if I helped this guy win his civil case. $2 million. I got so angry. I threw him out of the house. I cursed him. Went to Lafayette, and I went straight to Judge Shaw's office, and I told him exactly what happened, and he says, that's serious. We walked in his room. He kicked all the lawyers out. He told Emily to call the FBI. Next thing I know, I'm meeting with two FBI agents and explaining to them what happened. And they wanted me to meet with the guy that I knew, the restaurant guy, and see if he really meant it. He did say, I really didn't mean it. And I went, thank God, this is over. And 5 minutes later, he says, Judge, you really can make $2 million, maybe $3, depending on if we can get this other stuff going. And I went, oh God, this is going to be bad. Brought the tape back to the FBI. Finally, I had a hearing, and I told them the hearing was coming up, and I was really good. They had videos of everything from that point on, and I was really good. I mean, these guys, hook, line, and sinker, thought I was on the take. And I told them, I said, I want some upfront money. You know, I'm the one that's got my neck out there. I need some money. And they said, well, let us check on it. I said, if you don't come up with some cash, I'm going to stop this. Basically what I told them. And they said, so the next time I met with them, they gave me $50,000 in $100 bills. And I gave them back $20,000 and said, this is a finder's fee for helping me get all this money. If I'm going to get $2 million, I can give up 20. And not long after that, these two guys get arrested. They come to court and pled guilty later on because they are on video, and they when you're on video saying here's your money and this is what we want you to do, they gone, and they testified against the other guy. We're getting ready to go to Shreveport to testify. Kathleen and I were going together, and here comes my cousin, and he says, you got to be careful. I said, why? He said, because this guy is related to the mafia boss out of New Orleans. He said, you didn't know that? I said, no. He said, they didn't tell you that? I said, no. So I asked Cox later on. I love John Cox, great guy. I said, why didn't you tell me? He says, look, you already had a lot on your mind. We didn't want you to get nervous about that. I said, nervous? I'm now scared to death. He said, it's okay. Just do what you got to do. And so we went down there. I testified. The guy they brought in late, who we never had on tape, video or audio, walked. Some people asked me what I thought about that. I believe in the system. Either you can either you can prove it as a prosecutor or you can't, and obviously they couldn't. The case I am most proud of was the desegregation case. I got that case right after Judge Shaw died, because it was Judge Shaw's case, and I got the case because Judge Doherty and Judge Melanson were living in Lafayette at the time, and I was still living in New Iberia, and they thought that would be better, and I said okay, and I got a lot of pressure in that case. I like to say that I'm the only person that ever got the KKK and the NAACP on the same side. They both hated me with a passion, because I wasn't doing anything that either one of them wanted. I was doing what I thought was right. It was making sure that everybody was treated equal under the law, and that every child had an opportunity to get a good education. When I went to see some of the schools, I saw one of the schools had books under the desk where the teacher's desk, to hold the desk up. They had torn books. I mean, they had things that were just horrible. And I didn't want to destroy the entire school system in Lafayette, because I've seen it. I've seen it in other places where the judge came in too strong, too hard, and did too many things, and it got tough. The first thing I did was cut an order saying all the principals and all the teachers will stay where they are right now. And the Bishop of Lafayette went ahead and put out an order with their school saying, do not take any more kids into your school because of this, and because we were afraid about white flight, to people who could afford to send their kids to Catholic schools and the other schools that were non-public. But what happened was I ended up shutting down 4 schools. I ended up ordering 2 schools to be built in an area where African Americans could get there easily. My order also was that any child, and it was already in effect, it was already in effect that any child could go from one school to the other if they wanted to in the parish. However, there was no transportation. So I ordered the transportation, but not more than 7 miles from where the transferee, that is, if it was a majority black school and a black child wanted to go to a school that was a majority white school, it had to be within 7 miles, because they all had schools no more than 7 miles. So we got the transportation going, that these kids could decide if they wanted to go to this other school, and it helped. I didn't care what people were saying about me. I just didn't care. I was doing the right thing for the right reason. I always prided myself in the fact that I didn't yell at lawyers, especially the young lawyers. Toward the end of my career, after 25 years, I realized that I was getting grouchy, and I jumped on a couple of lawyers. I remember jumping on a couple of lawyers in court, young lawyers. I felt so badly. The next day I called them up and apologized because I didn't want to do that. Most of the times, if I had something to say to a lawyer that was not beneficial for the client to hear, I'd pull them in the back and tell them. I didn't want to hurt any of these guys. And because of that, a lot of lawyers sent their young people to start off with motion practice in front of me, which I was proud of. I was very proud of. So yeah, I've had a good run. I enjoy my life as a judge. I enjoy being married to a beautiful woman. I enjoy having 3 beautiful children and 9 beautiful grandchildren. I've had a great life, and God has blessed me.